Hey, welcome back to Project Me, day 67, 68, 69, something around there. Today we're going to talk about imposter syndrome, and it's something that I think so many people, so many people struggle with, particularly me. I know it's something that has plagued me for a long time, and so I thought it'd be really good to just sort of dive in today. I've done some thinking over the past day and a half. I've written down everything I think that causes it, and I've come up with some solutions as well for how to work through it. So we'll just talk about those. But before I do, I just want to briefly do some gratitude and acknowledge just how fortunate I am to have certain people in my life. Earlier this week, I was feeling very ill, very sick, and three friends of mine stepped up. The first made me soup. They actually went to all the effort of making me soup and bringing it into campus and leaving it in the fridge for me, and it was delicious. An incredible, lovely gesture that has all this effort behind it as well, and I'm so thankful for that. Secondly, another friend of mine offered to come and cook me dinner as well, which was just, I've never ever had anyone offer to do that or make me soup for lunch. And so frankly, I was just overwhelmed with awe and gratitude that people would go out of the way and do this for me. And a third friend, was really pushy and said, "Hey, let me get you some medicine. Let me get you some medicine." And I asked for some vitamin tablets, and she got it for me and refused to let me pay her. So she refused to tell me how much. So I owe her a drink or something at some point. But just those combination of things just showed me how lucky I am to have certain people in my life. And it's something that you often don't appreciate until moments like this actually happen, where you're just completely caught off guard, completely surprised and shocked that people would do this for you. And it's a really nice reminder that sometimes there are people in your life that do care about you. And thankfully I got to experience that the other day. And it was a really lovely day purely because of that, even if I was dying. But hey. Okay, let's talk about imposter syndrome now. Goodness, where does one start? Well, I think let's firstly dissect, what does it actually mean? What does imposter syndrome actually mean? And I think fundamentally it's about inadequacy. You find yourself in an environment, or you find yourself having achieved something, and it doesn't feel like an achievement, or it doesn't feel like an environment that you're welcome in, even though you've worked who knows how hard to be there. And the reason you don't feel comfortable is because you feel inadequate. You don't feel fit for purpose compared to your surroundings, compared to the people around you, whatever it may be. And I think there can be so many different reasons for developing this sort of fear of inadequacy. But first of all, I think for a lot of people it comes down to overthinking. And what I mean by overthinking is not just thinking a lot. I mean the constant quest to rationalize every single thing that happens in your life. No matter what happens, you are trying to find an explanation. You are trying to align it with your worldview. But it could just be a random event. It could just be anything that happens and it doesn't deserve an explanation, and yet you go out of your way to assign it one. And that, I find, at least in my experience, that over-rationalization, that search for meaning, tends to actually take away its meaning. And what I mean by that is, sometimes when you're walking in a park and you hear the birds singing, that's all it is. It's just the birds singing. You don't need to justify why they're doing it. Just appreciate it for what it is. Right? You find yourself in a room full of amazing people. Don't try and rationalize why you're there. You're there for a reason as it is, otherwise you wouldn't be there. If you're trying to justify to yourself why you should be there, then you've already lost, you know? And for people who overthink, for people who already over-rationalize, I'm preaching to the choir, right? I'm essentially saying not to think. And that's really, really hard. So the point is, I'm not actually trying to say that. But it's a tremendously difficult thing to try and force yourself to stop over-rationalizing. But that actually leads me to my first sort of solution, in a way, which is just to be aware of your thoughts. I've struggled with depression and... fuck it, why not? And... Sorry, it's really, really difficult for me to say. Suicidal thoughts in the past, and I've often found that this sort of downhill slope, often comes about because I go down a rabbit hole in my own thoughts, right? And trying to catch yourself, being aware of what you're thinking, catching yourself, very consciously, it takes a very conscious effort to do it, pulling yourself back from the brink is something that you need to do. And I think the same thing applies for overthinking. You need to avoid going down those rabbit hole of thoughts. You need to pull yourself back. And it is and I mean this very seriously, it takes a very conscious effort to do it, to reframe what you're thinking and catch yourself before it gets too dark. But that is my first solution, I think. Catching yourself and being aware of your thoughts. But there are a few other causes, I think, of that feeling of inadequacy, of imposter syndrome. One is certainly, I think, how you were raised. I was raised in a very achievement-driven household. And by that I mean my parents often put the most value on achievements. If I wasn't achieving, if I was stagnant or doing the opposite, there was no value in that, or at least no perceived value on my part in that, which meant that I always felt like I had to be achieving something in order to justify my own value. And again, going back to that rationalization thought process. And now I'm looking back, and it explains so much of who I am and why I'm doing what I am. I tend to invest my time in projects that actually deliver a tangible result because I think I need something to show, right? It's because of, that childhood experience of always having to provide value in some way in order to feel valued, or in order to feel praised, or to garner praise, or whatever it may be. And I see it coming across in my life all the time. I often don't, but I really should take a second and check myself. Am I doing this because it's something I want to do? Or am I doing this because I think it's going to give me a tangible result, or some achievement that I can use to justify to myself that I do belong in some way? That's number two for causes. And I think the solution for this one is reframing in your mind what success means. You need to learn to recognize that your achievement, it's the result of hard work. Yes, you've worked for it. But you can't let that constant quest for achievement pull you off track. You need to sort of pull yourself together, reconsolidate, and determine what actually matters for you. And this is a hard conversation, right? Because you're essentially trying to figure out what direction you want to go in. It's made harder by the fact that we live in a world where our attention is divided into 101 different things at any given point in time. It is so hard to figure out what you actually want to prioritize and what you should prioritize and what you want to do and what you need to do, and so on and so forth. So it's a very difficult conversation. There's no doubt about that. But being able to reframe in your mind, to reframe that in your mind, I think will go a long way. Now, another thing that I thought a little bit about is, well, two things I suppose, but they go sort of hand in hand as for what causes imposter syndrome, at least in my case. And that is a lack of confidence and ego. Now, they seem very at odds with one another. They're almost direct opposites, right? But if I'm being completely honest with myself, there's certainly a part of me that wants to be better than everyone else, because I think that, what do I think? Well, actually easy, I've already answered it. It's because I think that the only way I'll feel valuable, or that people will ascribe value to me, is if I'm better than everyone else. And, when you think about it logically, it's absolutely not true, right? I mean, there are 16 types of intelligence. People can be intelligent in so many different ways, and even then, intelligence isn't, just how intelligent you're on any one of those sort of scales. It could be a median, it could be a mean, an average, or whatever it may be. People are intelligent in so many different ways, in so many different possibilities of ways. It's, again, completely illogical to think that one can be just better than anyone else in any regard. It's just not possible. But logically, that's the case. But I've sort of internalized this belief that I should just be better. And so, in a way, it can be a good thing. Ego can be a good thing. It pushes you to keep pushing yourself and always strive for more. But that ambition can also be really bad as well. But the lack of confidence sort of balances out the ego, because despite this incessant need and desire to be better, there's also this inherent lack of confidence, which sort of pushes me down. It's sort of this fake humility, if you will. It's you push yourself down so that others don't push yourself down. It could even be a defense mechanism, I think. Lack of confidence is itself a very complicated topic that deserves a whole other series of explanations, but that just might be it. It's a defense mechanism as well, to some extent. But all of these causes of imposter syndrome, I think, are exacerbated by social media. And I don't want to go down this road because I think it's well trodden already. A lot of people have already shared, much better views on this than I could possibly put out there right now. But I think one solution is to simply just uninstall social media. And I think you'll find yourself far happier. You'll certainly find yourself comparing yourself to other people a lot less. And after all, comparison is the thief of joy. Right? But let's just briefly talk about solutions and we'll close down the video. I've just written down a sticky note, just some of my random thoughts before I started, just to get it in my head. Yes, reframe competence. What does intelligence look like to you? And think about it logically as well. You don't let yourself be guided by whatever would benefit or put you at the helm. Yeah. Own your success as well. I think it's really important to recognize that every time you have achieved something or worked hard, it's really important to make sure that you recognize it's the product of your hard work. It's not luck. It's not. You've worked hard for it. Right? And that's something I think a lot of people often forget. They're so willing to discount their own hard work just until someone actually disparages them. And then they go, well, actually, I did work hard for this. But it comes at a cost because by then they've already lost. I don't often talk about, the things I've achieved, because I'm worried about stoking the ego. But when I do share little tidbits, I often get people saying, "Oh my God, you're so lucky! Wow, how'd you do that? How'd you come across that? That's so lucky! Wow!" And it takes a very conscious effort to take to diverge from that path and go, wait, actually, no, I worked hard for this. I hardly watch TV shows. I hardly have a life outside of whatever projects I'm doing in university courses I'm working on, or essays, or whatever it may be. I hardly have a life. I've worked so incredibly hard for this. I've sacrificed so much. It's not luck. It's not luck at all. It's not even in the realm of possibility that it's luck. Of course, it's a little bit, but we digress. And reassessing the gap between yourself and others. Sometimes comparison can be a really good motivator. But I think you also, if you're going to compare yourself to someone, your achievements to someone else's, you also need to remember your circumstances are different. You did not start on an equal footing to them. You did not. To pretend otherwise is folly. Remember that you are different. It's your circumstances and the way you react that make you different. Own it. Your success is your success because of your circumstances. That's all I have to say. Those are my thoughts on imposter syndrome. A little bit long, but I think a really important topic. So, we're going to end it right there. This felt like a very eloquent video on my part. I'm quite proud of it for I don't script, so it's quite nice. Yeah, I feel like I got everything I wanted to say out. So anyways, that's awesome. I hope you're all having a fantastic week. I hope you're not sick like I was. If you are, I hope you get better. But I'm wishing you all a wonderful weekend and beyond. Until the next one. Cheers, guys.